Hello everyone! This video's purpose is to bring you a rhetorical question, which is, what brings you joy? There is a guy called Mihaly, which is this guy who I cannot pronounce the surname, it's too difficult. But this guy, he makes a research, he's a psychologist, right? And this research is to find out what makes people do what they do. And he went after some artists and scientists, people who were actually creating something, people who were putting into hard work and trying to achieve a specific goal. So this is all about what brings them joy, what brings them pleasure on doing that thing. So the question I want to make you is this: what brings you happiness? What brings you pleasure? What is your motivation to get out of bed? What makes your life worthwhile? Would you have an answer for that? Some people don't even know what purpose they are seeking, or even if they are seeking any purpose. And by doing the research, Mihaly brought this idea of the flow, is the concept of the flow in people's lives. And what is the flow? Is this constant work that doesn't need any motivation, any external motivation, it doesn't need any stimulation, anything but the person's driven motivation by that specific goal, which is waiting for you to get there. And you know the process to get there. You know what you need to do. And these artists, it could be a singer composing a song, or a scientist making a research as well, or developing some project in a lab. How many possibilities of creation, especially nowadays with so much information there for us to study and get updated. The research was made in the 70s, so imagine in that time he got to the conclusion already in that decade. He was able to understand that everything these people were doing was driven by purpose, by a natural motivation. And the feeling they described when doing, creating, developing, improving, working on it was ecstasy. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the feeling. They had the feeling of pleasure. It was a pleasant process. Every day they were putting into work for something meaningful for them. And that's the difference. When you don't feel motivation, you might make a few questions for yourself. The work I do is related to a purpose I have. Do I feel inspired in a daily basis? How often do I feel joy? Or if you don't feel joy at all, you should be asking yourself, why is that? What am I missing there? What can I do to improve it? What can I do to find this purpose? If you get to work and you find yourself counting the seconds, the minutes, the hours to go home, of course, this is natural. We tend to feel that because we get tired of staying in the same place, doing the same thing. Sometimes we feel this way. This is natural. But when it comes to a purpose attached to it that makes you be there, working hard, without thinking when the end of the day will come. I cannot wait to get home. I cannot wait to do this. I cannot wait to do that. When you're not present, doing what is required to do, if you have a purpose, every single day will be part of a process, a few steps taken toward that goal. And if you don't have this feeling, that's a big issue, that's a big problem, because you're gonna feel frustrated, right? Do you understand where I'm trying to get? So is your job attached to a purpose? Is your life attached to this purpose? To illustrate better, I will give my example. I try to work with my purpose of helping people, linking it to my principles and values, and the meaningful feeling that I'm doing something good for society, for my life, for my belief. And thirdly, but not least, that fulfills my day, because I know the tasks I need to do. I know what is required for me to do in that day, in that week, or in that month. That fulfills my whole agenda of tasks, and meaningful tasks, things that I don't need to try to create a motivation from nowhere. It comes naturally from the inner side of yourself. So I will leave here the talk from Mihaly, and you will see his surname is very hard to pronounce, and you will see how he explains better the research he done with these people.
Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, and that's by the way how you say his name, dedicates a big part of the book to this idea that a person can make himself happy or miserable regardless of what is actually happening outside just by changing the contents of consciousness. And he goes on to quote Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius and Viktor Frankl, so this idea isn't something new. It's been around for millennia now, but recently we've been able to gather more data on it. People have this idea that if you just had a bigger house, you'd be happy. If you just had a nicer car, you'd be happy. If you just had a lot of money, you'd be happy. But that's just not how happiness works. Here's a graph adjusted for inflation that shows a period of about half a century where personal income tripled, but it didn't really affect how happy people were. After some basic point where your basic needs have been met, buying an even bigger house isn't the way to happiness. It's about changing the contents of your consciousness. So how can we change the contents of our consciousness? One of the best ways to do this is to put ourselves in a state of optimal experience called flow. Csikszentmihalyi describes flow as the state in which people are so involved in an activity that nothing else seems to matter. He goes on to say that concentration is so intense that there is no attention left over to think about anything irrelevant or to worry about problems. Self-consciousness disappears and the sense of time becomes distorted. And you've probably experienced this before, and it's absolutely one of the best feelings in the world. If you're working on your business, you might be so focused on what you're doing that 12 hours might pass and you have no idea. All of a sudden you look up and you realize you haven't had any food, you haven't thought about anything else. The only thing that you could focus on was your business. And the same thing applies to so many other activities, whether you're a rock climber focused on climbing your new record or a master pianist composing your new masterpiece. It's an amazing feeling. You're so immersed into what you love doing, into what you're really good at, that your brain simply can't focus on other things. You're not worrying about stupid things. You're not regretting what you did yesterday or stressing about what you'll do tomorrow. It's absolutely one of the best feelings in the world. So if we look at the flow diagram, here's how you put yourself in the state of flow. You don't want what you're doing to be too challenging, otherwise you'll have anxiety. You don't want what you're doing to be too easy for your skills either, otherwise you'll be bored. But it's when you balance these two that you end up in the flow channel. You're striving towards the upper right corner constantly. You increase your challenge, you get better. You get better, you increase your challenge. And the more you move toward that direction, the more intense the state of flow gets. So this is not really a how-to book, but our goal should be to find what it is that we love and then keep getting better at it and keep making it more challenging. Or in other words, the main goal is to spend as much of your life as you possibly can in the state of flow, because that is where you find this unbelievable ecstasy. And Csikszentmihalyi gives an example of the Indians in the Shuswap region of Canada who would settle down in a place filled with resources, and life was good and they had everything they needed. They had all the food and fish where they were, but the elders would make sure that the entire village would just pack up and move to a new location every 25 or 30 years. This way they knew they would have new places to explore and hunt and fish and new challenges to overcome. And it's a great story to keep in mind when you think about how most people just want to settle down in front of their TV for the rest of their lives. And in a lot of my videos, I criticize being in front of the TV all night or spending your entire day on your Facebook feed. And I often get people who tell me, well, what if that makes the person happy? And the answer is, sitting on Facebook all day will not make anyone genuinely happy. If you pick a person who spends his entire day in front of the TV, he's probably not going to be the most exciting, happy, ecstatic person. So let's take a look at the graph again. Looking at your Facebook all day or watching TV puts you in the lower left corner of the graph, which is known as the area of apathy. There's no challenge involved, there's no skill involved, you're apathetic. And when you're not completely apathetic, you're probably sitting there bored or worrying about everything there is to worry about. So move away from that. Move away from the boredom, apathy, and worry, and move towards ecstasy, which is what you'll experience when you hit the state of optimal experience called flow.
If this reflection makes sense to you, please follow me. I will bring more ideas like this to help you improve yourself. Thank you so much.